For the longest time, when businesses talked about sustainability, it was like everyone was speaking a different dialect. You just couldn't compare apples to apples. Well, that's all changing. We're seeing this massive shift toward a single global language for how companies report. And it's being led by two brand new standards, IFRS S1 and S2. Let's get into what this actually means. For years, anyone trying to make sense of sustainability reports was basically swimming in what people called the alphabet soup of standards. You had GRI, you had SASB, TCFD. The list goes on. Each one had its own rules, its own focus. It was definitely well-intentioned, but man, was it a confusing mess. And the result of all that alphabet soup? Well, it was kind of chaos. If one company reported its emissions using one framework and their biggest competitor used a totally different one, how could an investor ever make a smart decision? This lack of clarity created huge problems for the financial markets. It just made it impossible to see the real risks and opportunities. So, to clean all this up, the International Sustainability Standards Board, or ISSB for short, was launched at the COP26 Climate Summit. Their mission was crystal clear. Take the best parts of all those different standards and create one single global baseline for sustainability disclosures. The whole idea was to bring some order to the chaos. And what they came up with were two new standards. The easiest way to think about it is like this. IFRS S1 is the foundation. It's the main rulebook that explains how you should report on any sustainability-related topic. Then you have IFRS S2, which is the first specific subject built on top of that foundation. And that one is all about the nitty-gritty details of climate-related disclosures. So, what do companies actually have to report on? Well, it really boils down to four key areas or pillars that are right at the heart of these new rules: governance, strategy, risk management, and finally, metrics and targets. First up is governance. This is all about accountability. Basically, who's in charge here. The standards want to know who at the very top, we're talking the board, senior management, is responsible for overseeing sustainability. Who owns the processes and the controls? Next, we've got strategy. This is where sustainability gets connected right into the core of the business. How do things like climate risk actually affect the company's business model and its bottom line? How is it shaping decisions today? And how resilient is the company to what's coming down the road? Pillar number 3 is risk management. This is really the how-to pillar. It's not enough to just say you have risks. Companies now have to explain the actual processes they use to find them, assess them, prioritize them, and keep an eye on them. It's all about showing how sustainability risk is baked into their overall risk management. And finally, we get to metrics and targets. This is really where the rubber meets the road. This is all about the hard data. You know the saying, what gets measured gets managed, right? Well, this pillar demands that companies disclose the specific metrics and the actual targets they're using to track their performance. And here's a perfect example to make that last pillar really concrete. Let's look at the steel giant ArcelorMittal. They don't just put out a fuzzy goal. No, they clearly state their overall ambition, net zero by 2050. They give a specific interim target, a 25% reduction by 2030. And they define exactly what's covered, Scope 1 and 2 emissions. This is the kind of clear, actionable information investors are looking for. But this is so much bigger than just making PDF reports easier to read. The ISSB also rolled out something called the IFRS Sustainability Disclosure Taxonomy. The best way to think of it is as a digital dictionary. It's a system for tagging every piece of data, which makes the information structured, machine-readable, and instantly comparable. And this is why that's a total game changer. With this digital system, an analyst or an investor can instantly pull the exact same data point, like Scope 1 emissions, from hundreds of different companies and plug it straight into their models. It takes these reports from being static documents and turns them into living, dynamic data. It opens up a whole new world of analysis. So is anyone actually using this? Is this a real thing? Absolutely. As of early 2025, that's the number of jurisdictions around the world that are already in the process of adopting these standards or are seriously consulting on it, 36. This isn't some trend on the horizon. This is a global shift that's happening right now. So the key takeaway here is pretty clear. We are officially moving past that chaotic alphabet soup era. A single global baseline for sustainability reporting is fast becoming the norm, not the exception, for businesses everywhere. And that leaves us with one final big question to think about.
For so long, the main challenge was just getting clear, consistent information. But now that transparency is becoming standardized, the conversation is going to shift. What new pressures will businesses face when they can't just disclose their performance, but are forced to actually improve it? Because when everyone's speaking the same language, poor performance has absolutely nowhere to hide.